G'day everyone. Today we're diving into a report on the current state of tech employment in Australia, conducted by the Tech Council of Australia, Australia's peak tech body. Now you may be wondering who these people are and what on earth is a peak body. Well, what a peak body is, that's kind of a big public policy question for another day. For now, the simplest way to explain it is that it's an organization funded by a bunch of tech companies to do research and advocate for the tech industry. Naturally, you may be wondering, can research from such an organization be trusted? Usually, I would be a little nervous, but for this report, considering it's not really a policy, it's got some policy recommendations, but it's not really a political report, I think it's alright, and most of the research seems to come from the ABS. So, with those caveats, let's get into it. So, first, face statistics. Currently, there are 935,000 tech workers in Australia, representing 6.7% of the total employed population. Yeah, I was pretty surprised by that too. That's more than baristas, plumbers, or hairdressers in Australia, and the 7th overall in Australia. Interestingly, ICT workers have the second highest advertised salary, at least according to Seek, just falling below CEOs, which is, not too shabby. And it's important to note with that this is based on one, advertised salaries, but importantly, advertised salaries in the tech sector, which, as this report goes on, you'll see why that becomes a bigger and bigger asterisk. And on that note, you may also be wondering who and who is not a tech worker, like how are they defining this? And that's a really important question that we're also going to deal with later. So let's look at tech work across Australia. So unsurprisingly, most tech workers are based in New South Wales and Victoria at about 300,000 each. But in terms of population, percent of population, ACT rises above them all at 14% of the employed population working in tech. Now, at first, this would be a little bit surprising, especially if you're not from Canberra or don't live in Canberra. But far more techies exist in public administration than you would naturally think. Combine that with the federal government being centered in Canberra and a low population, and boom. You got a beautiful city with a lot of tech workers that definitely should exist, and is no way man-made. Now, let's look at the recent growth in tech jobs. In the last year, we've seen a growth of about 8%, which is double the growth of other sectors, which, when considering how strong the economy has been, especially in employment figures, and especially between the period of February 2022 and February 2023, which this report is analyzing, where unemployment went down to a record low of 3.5% in February 23. That's a pretty impressive growth in tech jobs, especially with the background context of, as I'm sure we've all heard of, firings in America and the sort of what it seems like public perception of culling in the area. In real numbers, this represented 70,000 new tech jobs being added in the last year. This is also not a historical anomaly. On average, since 1986, tech jobs have grown at about 4 times the rate of other jobs. And so that leaves the question, where are all these tech jobs? And this is where the story really starts to expand. We can see that 62% of tech jobs are in non-tech based organizations. And this starts to make a lot of sense when you think about how integral tech is to the modern economy and to the modern corporation. Arguably more surprising than the fact is that 38% of tech workers are in the high-tech industry. And when we start to look at that non-tech industry and we see what parts of it are actually hiring tech workers, the story starts to make more and more sense. We can see that at the top, at 12% of tech workers exist in the professional, scientific, and technical services. Then, at 7%, public administration, and finally, finance, employing 6% of tech workers in Australia. And now, there have been some recent interesting developments, especially comparing the tech sector to the non-tech sector. And this is where we once again bring back those talks of firing people in America. And big question is, did the same thing occur in Australia? And if so, to what extent? And as in many policy questions, the answer is both yes and no. So between November 2022 and February 2023, Australia lost 400 tech jobs. But in that same period, the non-tech sector hired 8,200 tech employees. That means for every tech job lost in the tech industry, 20 were made in the non-tech industry. And add to a little bit of salt to that wound for those in the tech industry specifically. In that same period, 2,700 new non-tech roles within tech companies were created, which is a little bit ironic to say the least. Now, let's start to look at where tech people are working, both in the non-tech industry and the tech industry, as obviously neither are monoliths, especially the non-tech industry. And what this report did is it analyzed intensification over a period from about 2010 to 2023, looking at essentially what percentage of people in an industry were tech workers and how that changed over the last 13 years. At the top of the list, we have finance and insurance, where the percentage of people employed in those industries as techs rose from 10% to 18 and 17% respectively. That means over the last 10 years, finance went from 10% of them being tech workers to 18, which is pretty significant. Next up, we have professional services, which went from 8 to 12%, and then public administration from 7 to 11%. Based on the data, this seems to be where industries where tech is infecting the most, with most other areas only seeing intensification or some de-intensification of about a percentage point of 2. The report also revealed where the most popular types of tech workers end up. So, for example, the most popular type of tech worker, according to the ABS and according to this report, are software developers, of which 53% work in computer system design and related services, which really, I guess the only surprising thing about that is 47% don't work in those sort of services. The runner-up for where these people end up working is finance at only 6%. So you can see after computer system design, they are in a very broad range of fields. Next, we have management and organization analysis, of whom 44% are in the professional service fields. The next two are unsurprisingly pretty similar, with ICT managers and ICT support technicians going to computer system design at rates of 36 and 31%. And then both of their runner-ups are also the same, of going into public administration at rates of 8 and 10% respectively. And then finally, we have database, system admins, and ICT to security going into computer system design at a rate of 28% and public administration at 15%. And so we can see pretty quickly as we go down the list, the percentage of them that go into this one specific field gets lower and lower and lower, and the amount that go into clearly a much broader sector of the economy expands continuously. So now we need to address the elephant in the room. One crucial aspect that this report relies heavily upon, and as I've alluded to, is the question of what exactly constitutes a tech worker. Now, fortuitously, the ABS has standardized industry codes for different kinds of employment. And one of the nice things this report does, unlike many of the way they cite their sources, where they often just put brackets ABS, which is super helpful, thanks guys, is they do give us a list of what they counted as direct tech jobs. Now, most of these make sense. Some of these you're looking at and you're thinking a little dodgy, like we see IT sales professionals and like, yeah, I guess so, maybe, maybe not. But I found two that particularly stuck out to me. That was management and organization analysts and other information and organization professionals. Now, the management and organization analysis is one that I want to give particular eye to, considering that was considered the second most popular tech job in the analysis I just summarized above. So what exactly are these jobs? I mean, like maybe this is ICT related. We don't know. So I looked into it. And as you can see on the screen, this is the definition of what a management and organization analyst is. Yeah, it doesn't sound super techy. They study organizational structures, methods, risk systems, and procedures. Now, per the ABS website, this does include things like industry analysis and logistics analysts, but it also explicitly excludes ICT business analysts. And like, I guess you can see an argument, especially for logistics analysts and other sort of analysts, potentially leading into the data analysty side of things, but I'm not really buying it. Now, the second category, other information organization professionals, I have no idea how they got this onto the list. The ABS defines this as people that work as electorate officers, liaison officers, migration agents, immigration consultants, and patent examiners. Like maybe patent examiners, but that's like one of 7 on the list. And honestly, it leaves me scratching my head as to how this ended up on this list. Now, I did attempt to look into the ABS data. Unfortunately, it's publicly available. They don't have the numbers on this level, so I wasn't really able to confirm to see how significant this would be to the report. I still made this video because, on the whole, these were really 2 roles out of what you can see below was quite a few. And despite management and organization analysts clearly being a significant number, I don't really feel like it sufficiently took away from the story that this report was telling. So that's why I made this video on the report anyway. I thought it was a really interesting report. I've been seeing a lot of news lately about firings and hirings and all this stuff in the tech industry, and I thought this was a good report to sort of give everyone a base to work with and get some nice numbers into the mix. Anyways, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.